They say a mother knows. That somewhere deep in her bones, a mother can feel when something isn't right with her child. But that morning I didn't feel anything, not a flicker of warning, not a twinge of instinct, just the usual nervous excitement a mother feels watching her only daughter marry the man she loves. The Ashcroft room was glowing with gold and ivory high ceilings, soft jazz humming through the speakers, and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the hills of Asheville like a painting you could step into. I wore my best dress, navy silk long sleeves, the one Madison once said made me look like someone important. I thought I might cry when she walked down the aisle, but when the moment came, I didn't cry. I just watched holding my breath, wondering how on earth the little girl who once begged me for pony rides had become this graceful woman in white. Chase stood waiting at the altar in his tailored tux, flashing that calm movie star smile of his. He looked every bit the loving, patient man Madison had gushed about for years. I admit I liked him, or at least I had no reason not to. He always called me Mrs. Moore, even after I insisted he use my first name, always opened doors, always offered to help carry groceries whenever he visited the farm. He was charming, the kind that makes you second-guess your own gut. Madison looked radiant. There's no other word for it. Her makeup subtle hair swept into a low bun, her eyes, my eyes, shining with something too big to name. As I watched them exchange vows, all I felt was pride, not suspicion, not dread, just love, simple and steady. The ceremony ended in applause, and soon we were all upstairs in the dining hall, raising glasses, clinking silverware. My assigned seat was at the family table right between Chase's, Mother Lorraine Thornton, and a floral centerpiece big enough to block your view if you leaned the wrong way. Lorraine was elegant in a champagne-colored gown, her perfume soft and expensive. We chatted about the catering, the venue, the weather, polite surface-level things. She seemed lovely, maybe a little reserved, or maybe that's just how wealthy women from Charlotte carried themselves. I remember she laughed at something I said about chickens I used to raise them, and for a moment I felt less like a farmer sitting in silk and more like I belonged there. Like maybe somehow this was going to work. Maybe Madison had found her match. Maybe this was the kind of love that would last. At one point, Chase approached the table carrying a bottle of red wine. He said something about saving the special vintage for the mothers. He poured a glass for Lorraine, then one for me carefully. His hand didn't shake, his smile didn't twitch. I thanked him, raised the glass slightly, but didn't take a sip right away. The toast hadn't happened yet. We sat, chatted, waited for the signal from the DJ. Madison and Chase were off getting photos taken on the balcony, and I figured I had a few minutes to freshen up before dinner was served. I excused myself, smoothing down my dress, as I stood the silk soft beneath my fingers. I reached for my clutch, nodded politely at Lorraine, and walked out of the room, heels clicking softly across the marble floor toward the restrooms at the end of the hall. The lights in the corridor were dimmer than the ballroom, a touch cooler. The hallway smelled faintly of orchids and cleaning spray. I passed a waiter adjusting a tray of hors d'oeuvres, then pushed open the restroom door. I didn't know that by the time I came back, one small decision, one quiet exchange would change everything. The restroom was empty, quiet, a welcome pause from the laughter and clinking glasses outside. I stood in front of the mirror, touched up my lipstick, and took a few deep breaths. My face looked a little flushed. Nerves, maybe, or the wine, though I hadn't touched mine yet. Weddings bring a kind of weight, even the happy ones. You spend years pouring yourself into a child, then one day, you watch them walk away into a new life, and you're expected to just clap and smile. I wasn't sad, just adjusting. The door creaked open behind me. I caught the movement in the mirror. A young woman in a black serving uniform stepped in her braid, swinging behind her. She looked startled to see me. "Oh, sorry," she said, and paused. "It's all yours," I said, stepping aside from the sink. But she didn't go to the stall. She hesitated, glancing back at the door, like she wasn't sure if she should say something. That's when I noticed her name tag, Grace. She cleared her throat and stepped closer. "Ma'am, I know this is going to sound strange, but I think I should tell you something." I stiffened a little, unsure if she was about to complain about something or ask for help. "All right," I said cautiously. "I was clearing plates from your table a few minutes ago." she whispered, and I saw your son-in-law, the one in the tux chase. He was doing something with your wine glass. I couldn't tell exactly what, but he looked careful, like he didn't want anyone to see. The floor might as well have dropped from beneath me. I blinked. I'm sorry, what are you saying? I don't know what he put in it. Maybe it was nothing. But it didn't look right. She rushed out, hands fidgeting. And if it were me, I'd want someone to tell me. I stared at her heartbeat thudding in my ears. The words didn't compute at first. Chase. The man who just poured the wine like it was an honor. The man marrying my daughter today. I searched her face for doubt or a hint of exaggeration, but her eyes were wide and sincere, and her voice was shaken. Are you sure? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Grace nodded quickly. He didn't see me. I was behind the floral cart, but I swear I saw him drop something into the glass. I don't know what. I had to say something. She glanced over her shoulder again, then gave me a small nod before slipping out the door. I stood frozen hands gripping the edge of the sink. My stomach twisted, not with fear but disbelief. This was absurd. Chase tampering with my drink. But something about the way Grace said it, the quiet urgency in her voice, the look in her eyes. She wasn't lying. I stared into the mirror. My face looked different now. Tighter, like the mask of a woman suddenly aware she might be standing at the edge of a cliff. I could have dismissed it, could have brushed it off as a misunderstanding, a nervous server reading too much into a moment. But I couldn't shake it. I couldn't forget the way Chase looked when he handed me that glass, polite, practice, precise. I left the restroom slowly, thoughts storming through my head. I didn't feel anger yet, not even fear, just alert. Like something inside me had finally woken up. Back in the dining hall, everything looked the same. Guests were laughing, silverware, clinking champagne, bubbling in glasses. No one else knew the world had shifted. I walked calmly to my seat, my glass was still there untouched, and so was Lorraine's. And that's when an idea took root in my mind, sudden, sharp, and reckless. If there was something in that glass, I wasn't going to be the one to drink it. I slid back into my seat like nothing had changed, smiled politely, adjusted the napkin in my lap. My fingers were trembling, but I curled them around the silverware to steady them. Lorraine turned to me and chuckled. Didn't get lost in that hallway, did you? Almost, I said, trying to match her light tone. She reached for her glass, the one Chase had poured for her. The same bottle, same careful smile, same gesture. It's a lovely wine, she said. You haven't tried yours? Not yet, I murmured. My glass, still untouched, sat right where I'd left it. Crimson, smooth, still. I glanced toward Chase. He was at the sweetheart table now, whispering something to Madison, who giggled and swatted his arm playfully. He didn't even look in my direction. I turned back to the table. Lorraine's hand was on the stem of her glass, lifting it casually. I don't know what came over me truly. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe I just didn't want to walk away from that room, not knowing if Grace was right. Before Lorraine could take a sip, I reached across casually like a nervous mother making a clumsy toast and said, "Oh, I think this one's mine. They might have gotten switched when I stepped away." Lorraine looked surprised, but didn't resist. "Oh," she said, pulling her hand back. I didn't realize. I smiled tight but polite and swapped the glasses quickly. Hers for mine, mine for hers. It was smooth. Easy. No one noticed. No one except me. I took a small sip from what had been Lorraine's glass. Now mine, just enough to keep the gesture natural. It tasted fine. A little dry. Not unusual. Lorraine, meanwhile, took a generous sip from her new glass, the one that had originally been mine. She set it down, then turned back to the conversation with another guest. I stared at the white linen tablecloth, pretending to listen, pretending to smile. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the music anymore. Maybe Grace had been wrong. Maybe Chase was just being helpful. Maybe this entire thing was just a paranoid thought planted by an overworked server. But then 5 minutes later, Lorraine stopped mid-sentence. She blinked, rubbed her temple, reached for her water glass but missed it slightly. "Are you all right?" I asked. She waved a hand, just a little dizzy. Probably the champagne catching up with me. I nodded, but something inside me was screaming. Her voice began to slur subtly at first, but enough for me to notice. Her skin turned a shade paler. She clutched the edge of the table, knuckles white. Then her hand shook. The wine glass tipped slightly as she tried to reach for it again, wobbling before it settled back. She blinked confused, then slumped slightly to the side. It all happened fast after that. One guest gasped. A server rushed forward. Lorraine's eyes fluttered closed. Someone shouted her name. Chairs scraped. Someone screamed for help. And in the middle of it all, I sat frozen. I hadn't moved. I couldn't. Chase was across the room when he saw the commotion. He rushed over, shouting, wide-eyed, crouching beside his mother, like the picture of a concerned son. But I wasn't looking at him. I was staring at that glass, the one Lorraine drank from, the one that was supposed to be mine, the one Chase had poured for me. Everything slowed down, and right there in the chaos and flashing cell phone lights, I realized something with bone-deep certainty. Grace had been right. But the wrong woman had paid the price. The ambulance came in less than 10 minutes. Still, it felt like a lifetime. Lorraine was conscious when they wheeled her out barely. Her face was ashen, lips slightly parted, eyes glassy and confused. They strapped an oxygen mask to her face as the paramedics rattled off vitals and rushed her down the hallway. Chase held her hand the whole way, jaw clenched, whispering things I couldn't hear. Madison trailed behind them, gripping her bouquet so tight the petals crumbled beneath her fingers. The wedding, of course, came to a screeching halt. No first dance, no dinner, no cake cutting. The DJ muted the playlist halfway through a Marvin Gaye classic, and people stood around whispering in awkward clusters, casting glances in my direction like I might have answers. But I had none, or maybe I had one, but I wasn't ready to say it aloud. I stayed at the venue long after most guests had cleared out. I needed space to think and to breathe. My heart hadn't stopped pounding since the moment Lorraine's glass hit the table. A young manager approached all apologies and stress sweat. "Ma'am, is there anything I can do? Can I call someone for you?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm fine, thank you." I wasn't fine. I took my coat and stepped outside into the cool North Carolina evening. The city buzzed below, oblivious. Somewhere out there, my daughter was at the hospital with her husband and his mother, and I was alone on a stone balcony staring out at a skyline that looked suddenly unreal. I didn't know what to think. If I told anyone what Grace had said, if I admitted I'd switched glasses, they'd think I was crazy, or worse. But I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it, couldn't forget the slurred words, the trembling hand, or how fast Chase had rushed to her side, not like a worried son, but like a man trying to contain a mistake. I went home that night and didn't sleep, not 1 minute. The next morning, I received a message from the hospital. Lorraine was stable, sedated under observation. No official diagnosis yet, but they suspected she'd ingested a high dose of a powerful sedative, the kind not found in any wedding wine. And with that, the last layer of denial cracked clean down the middle. I called Margot. Margot Blake wasn't just my attorney, she was an old friend, the kind who knew when I was lying even over the phone. "I need to talk," I said. She didn't ask questions, she just said I'm on my way. When she arrived at my house, I told her everything, about Grace, about the restroom, about Chase and the glass, about Lorraine. I didn't leave anything out, not even the part where I switched the drinks without fully knowing why. Margot listened without blinking. Then she said 6 words that confirmed what I'd been trying not to admit. "You know, he meant that drink for you." I stared down at the cup of coffee she'd brought me, hands wrapped tightly around the heat. "I didn't want to believe it, but you do." I nodded. Margot leaned forward. "Evelyn, we need to go to the police." I didn't argue. We filed a report that afternoon. Grace was contacted for a statement. She agreed without hesitation to testify about what she saw. We also requested the venue's security footage, not knowing if it captured anything at all, but hoping. I told them everything I knew. Almost everything. I left out one detail, Madison, because somewhere deep down, I still didn't want to believe my daughter had anything to do with this, even though I remembered the way she'd pushed me lately to sign simple documents for the estate, even though she'd gotten distant, more invested in Chase's business than my concerns about selling the farm. even though the night before the wedding, I overheard her whispering on the phone, "It has to be done clean." At the time, I'd assumed she meant flowers or table linens. I was wrong, but I wasn't ready to say that out loud. Not yet. 2 days after the wedding, I got a call from Officer Melanie Brooks, the detective assigned to the case. Her voice was calm professional, but with that slight edge that tells you things were no longer casual. "We received the toxicology report from the hospital," she said. "Lorraine Thornton ingested approximately 80 milligrams of zolpidem. That's not something you find in wine." I swallowed hard. "Is she talking yet? She's still foggy. It'll be a few more days, maybe longer." I could hear the quiet typing in the background, the sound of someone building a case piece by piece. "Did you find anything at the venue?" There was a pause. "Then security footage confirms Chase Thornton poured a glass for you. Your account checks out." We also spoke to the server, Grace, who gave a very detailed, consistent statement. "She's credible." "Do you think he meant to drug me?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "We can't officially say that yet," she replied. "But it's the working theory." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in my kitchen for almost an hour staring at nothing. That night I pulled out the old lockbox I kept hidden beneath the floorboard in my bedroom closet. It held the deed to my property, the title to the farmhouse, and a folder I hadn't opened in years, the one marked Madison Plus Trust. I'd set it up after her father died. She was only 16, still grieving, still lost. I wanted to protect her future, and back then I truly believed Chase might be part of it in a good way. When they got engaged, Madison insisted I list Chase as an emergency co-beneficiary in the event something happened to her. I agreed reluctantly, but something in my gut that night told me to look again. And there it was, tucked in the back behind the notarized forms and letters, a document dated 3 weeks ago bearing my name and signature. But I hadn't signed it. It authorized the immediate transfer of title and ownership of my 13-acre property, the land I'd lived on for over 30 years, to a shell company owned by none other than Chase Thornton. It was forged. I nearly dropped the folder. My hands were shaking as I picked up the phone. I called Madison. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail, voice tight but controlled. "Maddie, I need to talk to you. It's important." An hour later, she showed up, still in workout clothes, hair in a bun, no makeup. She looked exhausted, or maybe just guilty. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one she used to do her homework on. I slid the forged transfer document across to her without a word. She stared at it. Her face didn't flinch. "I didn't sign that," I said. She stayed quiet. "Tell me you didn't know." Madison looked down at her hands, picked at a spot on her fingernail. "It was supposed to be simple," she said softly. "You were already talking about retiring. Chase said this way, you wouldn't have to worry about anything." "This way," I repeated, "by faking my signature and nearly killing someone." Her eyes snapped up. "He didn't mean to hurt her. It was supposed to be you." She stopped herself too late. Silence. That was all I needed, my daughter, my only child. She knew, maybe not all of it, but enough. I pushed the chair back slowly and stood. "You need to leave." "Mom, now." She hesitated, and then for the first time in years I saw something real flicker in her eyes, shame, and she walked out without another word. The next morning I met Margot at her office downtown. She had already reviewed the forged document and traced the shell company listed on the title transfer. Sure enough, Chase was listed as the sole beneficiary under a different LLC name. The paperwork trail was sloppy, but it was there. "I've seen scams before," she said, placing the folder gently on her desk. "But trying to poison a woman to get her land, that's bold, even for him." I gave a hollow laugh. He picked the wrong mother-in-law. Margot reached across and squeezed my hand. "We're going to stop them." And we did. We filed formal fraud charges that morning. Officer Brooks had already begun interviewing Chase, but this time she had the documents to match Grace's statement, the toxicology report, and now a forged signature on a legal transfer. By Thursday, Chase was arrested at the hospital. Ironically, he was leaving his mother's room when officers cuffed him. Madison called me that night not to apologize, not to ask forgiveness, but to scream, You ruined everything, she shouted through tears. He's all I had. No, I said quietly. You had me, and you gave that up the moment you stood by and let him try to erase me. She hung up. The next few weeks were a blur. The media got wind of the arrest son-in-law accused of poisoning for inheritance. My phone rang constantly. I refused all interviews. The only people I talked to were Officer Brooks, my lawyer, and the few friends who still came by to check on me with casseroles and quiet hugs, and Lorraine. She recovered slowly physically, at least. When we finally sat down for tea, she was thinner, quieter, but sharp as ever. He tried to kill you, she said bluntly. And he almost killed me instead. I know. She stared at her tea. I never wanted to believe it, but I saw the way he looked at you, Evelyn. It wasn't kindness, it was calculation. I should have seen it earlier, I said. She shook her head. We're mothers. We look for the good in them even when it's rotting. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'm sorry for what happened to you, I said. She looked at me and smiled sadly. I think I was just collateral damage. She wasn't wrong, but it still broke my heart. By spring, Chase had been formally charged with attempted murder, fraud, and forgery. His trial was set for fall. Margot said the DA had a strong case. Grace had agreed to testify. The wine glass had traces of zolpidem residue, and the signed statement from the notary who refused to verify my signature was the final nail in the coffin. Madison disappeared for a while. I heard she left town, quit her job, sold her car. I didn't try to find her. If she wanted to come back, she'd have to do it on her knees, not with more excuses. Meanwhile, I stayed. I tended to the farm, walked the same gravel paths I'd walked for 30 years, repainted the porch, fixed the mailbox, even planted the hydrangeas I'd put off since last season. The land was mine. The home was mine. And after everything, I was still standing. Not because I was fearless, but because I refused to be erased. Months passed. The land turned golden with summer, then mellowed into the burnt orange of fall. I harvested apples from the old tree Chase once offered to have removed to increase property value. I kept it instead, even planted another beside it. Some things are worth holding on to. Others you learn to let go. I never heard from Madison again. Not even when Chase's trial began. Not when his sentence was handed down 20 years without parole. Not when reporters knocked on my door asking for the real story. I told them nothing. The truth wasn't theirs to twist. It was mine to carry. What hurt most wasn't Chase. It was her silence. The child I raised, the daughter I fed, clothed, protected. I would have given her everything, and she sold me out for acreage and empty promises. I'd be lying if I said I didn't cry. Some nights I still do. But then I remember what Grace told me the night before the wedding. People think betrayal happens in the moment someone stabs you. But it really happens the moment they stop seeing you as a person. And I stopped being a person to her the second I stood in the way. But I didn't stay down. I rebuilt what I had, stronger this time. The locks were changed, the paperwork secured, and the farm. It became a refuge not just for me, but for a few local kids I started mentoring, teen girls mostly, bright, rough-edged, the kind who just needed someone to look them in the eye and say, "You matter. Don't ever let anyone take your place at the table." One of them asked me once, "Miss Evelyn, do you ever regret it?" I looked out at the field that nearly cost me my life and said, "No, I regret trusting the wrong people. But I don't regret fighting for what's mine." And that's the truth. The wine glass sits in a box, now tucked away in a closet. A silent reminder of how close I came to vanishing not in a blaze, but in a whisper. Erased quietly, conveniently, like so many women before me. But I didn't let them, not then, not now, not ever. What would you do if the people closest to you, your own family, tried to erase you? Would you stay quiet, or would you fight back? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep telling the stories that matter. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay strong, stay seen, stay you.